Alright, it's magic time. And welcome. Welcome to Mike paints off of a photograph and paints his nephew and his fiancée. And talks about the end of the art world as we know it. I'm currently in a different location in the United States of America than my regularly scheduled place on the planet. Not too far away, actually. Nothing to fear. I'm in no one's backyard. Not trying to track anyone down. Anyway, I was thinking about trying to generate this podcast or this stream was more about, I don't know, I wanted to actually speak about divination, and try to figure out, kind of like in the movie Arrival, like in order for me to have seen the quote-unquote close-up of the, I don't know, I almost want to call it the flying spaghetti monster. I call it the red electric jellyfish star that I saw in Montana, or just general divination that occurred in 2010 and 2011. I do know that, I've been dropping Easter eggs in some of my artwork, but probably not in this one. This one's going to be just fairly straightforward representationalism. But I was also going to talk about how, the AI arts are basically, taking over this whole industry of being a painter, right? And I don't know. I got a commission to paint a dog recently. I've been selling a few prints during the off season of street selling. So I'm not too been out of shape by that. Although it's, the on season's always better. But I am, absolutely unnerved by the complete eclipse and access to high visuals that are going to come about, that have already come about, that people are using in their videos and whatnot. And so, kind of like collecting old typewriters or the dodo bird, I'd, like, just do a paint and talk, and I guess I could talk about anything, right, from the AI, displacement of coding jobs and blog jobs, and more of the workforce going out of the system. By the way, I have a link tree in the comments that goes to a low-level, very low-cost matrix, as well as some other items that you can see on there. Why a matrix that's low cost? Well, those that are the poorest. I think there's nothing they can do online. Might want to join a matrix that could possibly generate spillover if it has good momentum. I already got spillover. Made $8 just for signing up. That's because the guy above me is such a powerhouse, I guess. But in any case, I'm also advertising on TikTok and so forth. But this should be a good painting for these two. These two are actually probably much more form-fit personality-wise than my nephew was with his baby mama. And anyway, so I'm happy to do this. Their wedding's not till March, but looking for some insight. You need better skin tonation materials on his bride-to-be than I currently have. That being said, though, okay. So after I wrote a book on contradiction, I made this painting that was my reduction of the categories in Western philosophy, right? Breaking everything down into triads. And the reason I wanted everything into triads was because I thought that most things are buttressed. Justification itself requires kind of a triad, right? You have two things and then some opposing element or a third element that justifies the first two, right? And so to me a triangle is like the first justification. And so you try to reduce the rudiments that are held up or presumed in modern Western philosophical traditions, such that justified true belief is a triad, right? And that's kind of based on or a secondary application would be to use an Occam's razor or a simplification, right? How to most easily simplify a process, right? So if you can take the basic genres, epistemology, phenomenology, ontology, truth might be laid out as correspondence, coherence, and agreement as a triptych, right? Meaning that if you have an item that you can correspond to, like I can refer to something behind this camera and I can correspond with it by mentioning it, calling it behind the camera, right? And I can say it's coherent, and I can say the idea of what I'm saying is coherent, but there's an item behind the camera, right? But as far as agreement, right, I could turn the camera around and show you guys, and then you could agree that there's an item behind the camera, right? But that would be like agreement upon faith, right? You'd have to see it visually, right? But then you might think, oh well, it's additive and it's a post-production, right? Or it's not really what it appears to be. Meaning, if you guys don't sense it, you might not agree with it, right? And so anyway, the whole point was to reduce different aspects of the Western philosophical canon down into roughly 9 distinct triads, and that once again re-invoked like the other project, the greater project, which is the divination that I used in pentacles that were color codes and direction codes. And I was just kind of watching the movie Arrival again, where the aliens came down, and the language that they're using in these little spiral splots have to do with different timelines in one's own history, and almost a type of telepathy that that reads things, right? But the individual applying it is still the central node, right? And so I could say that the phenomena that I experienced that nobody else can sympathize with exactly, I still believe if I can outline the divination language or articulate it, that it can possibly be kind of like a spell that's written down, re-invoked or re-understood. What is being intended by my even trying to relay that sort of correspondence to the listener, right? And so I wanted to have the first, which lesson on or divination lesson, which WITCH lesson, that is kind of a divination school, right? It requires that one is actually using what I'd say is probably maybe a pagan Norse god or any historic thing. I think the pentagram goes back historically. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it was extra prolific in Egypt. Can't even say it was there, but
I think this is yours.
oh, well, you can just put her there. I might have paint on my hands.
Okay, that's fine. I can just check.
All right. And I'm actually staying with my folks, right, so that I can help get all of their medical needs organized and put together and so forth. While I'm busy trying to figure out how to both invoke, like I wanted to run over the divination process because I myself am going to have to re-invoke it quite shortly. And part of re-invoking it has to do with submitting yourself to it. And I think I got a couple precursors already, so, symbolic precursors, events that occur in your real world, but they're so close to you actually, and shockingly so, that they are, or could be presumed to be, because of their accent, meaningful to you, right? Not only are they to be presumed that way, they are that way. They are also that way, I will say, right? So if you realize that the events that are occurring in your real life are meant for you to interpret as meaningful, even though, secularly, naturalistically, you just say they're events. They're just occurrences, and there's no symbolic meaning, no ghost in the machine. But to know me is to love me. To know me is to appreciate the fact that I'm suggesting that there may be some sort of solution to it all, if one is willing to be caught up in a type of rapture, and it's something that's, I'd say, godly or alien. And since I've already experienced it a few times, but still most powerfully now over a decade ago, the re-invoking of it, the allowance of the symbol set of a pentagram, a pentacle, right? So on the edge of the pentacle, on the circle, you put directionality, you both left and right, right? But you're trying to initially orient your pentagram to something like a North Star, I would assume, maybe. Now, I'm saying that because arrival took place in Montana, meaning that's where the aliens were. That's where I saw things. And that's where the balloon is, the Chinese balloon. And so those are, occurrences once again, but they're not without their trend line in my head, right? And so I would be lying to myself if I didn't think that conjunction didn't have something to do with some other intersecting quality that I myself have to go investigate again, or dare myself, if you will, to actually, hopefully, meet its red star again, and or its like or ilk, and engage it, right? But normally, I call it the real Holy Ghost. When the real Holy Ghost takes you over, or you could say jinn, perhaps some people think that, I've been inducted or I've been being seduced by a negative force or a Satan or a satanic force. To me, it still seems like perhaps the red star is like the dragon with 7 heads and 10 crowns, that it itself is one big crown, and that maybe it had 7 tentacles, maybe it had 10, somewhere around that amount. I remember painting it in the painting and maybe thinking it even had 14, but nonetheless, however I want to make metaphors or analogs to the event, the whole idea was to try to convey the information to you guys in case, I have to fly off the planet for some given time. If you will, that is. Watching the Dr. Stephen Greer, testify before Congress about the, I don't know if he brought up the Manhattan Project, but of course the 51, or Area 51 from the landings in Roswell and the reverse engineering of things. Let's see if this is anyone that could be. This guy here. Oh. Hello. Wait. Hello. Okay. Two random calls today from sound like someone on the other end, but nobody on the other end. And I was like, hey, be wary about answering in your normal voice, because now they can just dupe your voice, right? So we can all be expecting greater dupes, right? And the thing about me is, well, look, I can back this up, and I can implement a greater truth that bounds the Mandela effects together also, that one might be experiencing, right? And that is that there are different potential parallel worlds to this one, right? That when they intersect, they exchange information, right? And anyway, one may be able to suggest that there's a parallel version of them that is on another planet, but it's roughly a year prior to this one, meaning people were born a year prior in it than they are in this one. And there may also be an explanation about just tapping into kind of like the lady that solved the equation in Arrival, right, was taken aboard their ship and kind of like given the insight relative to her future daughter, that the aliens let her know about, like give her memories of her future daughter, and her future daughter was giving her the memories were like a paradoxical loop back, such that she could solve their language being that which is a part of a time travel, right? Well, if you take a space-time idea, even though I guess one's local universe has been proven to be not real, even though one's local universe is proven to be, I don't know, not just an energetic state, but you could say like not real, so hence like a simulation, meaning that your consciousness is still, based on the sense datum that your organism is limited to, and the bandwidth of your mind in order to be able to apprehend it, right? That what actually is occurring, right, is greater generally than your bandwidth, but you would assume though that a higher intelligence would do its best to convey, to dumb down the information enough so that you could pick it up, right? But and so anyway, my point is I feel like there's something greater that needs to be done, and that it actually that needs to be known, and that this needs to be known as soon as possible. And now that the spring has, put it this way, Punxsutawney Phil was wrong, man. It wasn't 6 more weeks of winter. Anyway, so instead of painting and showing you guys the pinnacle, right, and perhaps I should put one here, and I could potentially draw it on, right, to show you guys how a pinnacle is put together, right? And if you put like one of the tines pointing directly up, or just slightly off center, but not so much that you're dealing with a downturned one, right? Meaning like a goat-looking pinnacle where the axis is down, but you shouldn't fear that either, right? Meaning that's kind of why I think it's taboo, is because divination is actually real, and apparently some other people were able to speak to the gods through a language, but I found it beyond me. Like I was dealing with something too big, too powerful, and therefore too scary also. Some light on here, and yet something that if one's local reality is not real, right, is also something that one shouldn't be afraid of. Like I've leapt off of buildings, and I've been to crazy, to London and Kiev and New York and Seattle and Olympia and other state capitals. Not that that matters, but the point is trying to defy the rudiments of the reality or the rule set of the matrix that you're in. If it is a matrix, you could inform the program that you're attempting to violate the rules of the matrix, almost like Captain Kirk violating saying, hey, I'm going to win the Kobayashi Maru, right? And set to reprogram, the Kobayashi Maru so that he beats it, hence impressing, Spock and getting him on board. At least that's how they laid out the story on the kind of the pre-Star Trek characters inside of, that was a nostalgic, I don't know what would be the proper word for that, right? Where, kind of like I don't know, just where Captain Kirk and Spock and Bones and Uhura and so forth are all in cadet school. It's kind of a futuristic version of that, which anachronistically would have taken place prior to the 1960s and 70s version of Star Trek with William Shatner. Anyway, and so the whole idea that the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many is also something that needs to be considered, and that's like self-care and caring for, I guess you'd say, other individuals enough to warrant self-sacrifice if that's what it takes to solve problems. I guess you'd say godly problems, eschatological problems, salvation problems, gather greater insight, raise your IQ 50 points in just a matter of minutes. Anyway, I do think I fail at my communication, definitely. A, I don't have the viv. B, I'm not putting in the time to format my recordings. What am I going to say? Now, this particular woman actually has huge blotches, spots on her face that are these naturally occurring marks, almost like she's a type of human that has extremely large freckles, or like a leopard would be compared to a lion, right? And yet in the picture she's wearing makeup, so for the most part I'm just trying to mimic that, but trying to remember where the natural facial tones are also, their natural skin tones. Waiting for a photo on that, which maybe I got. Maybe that's what all this dinging was going on in the background, but I don't think so. Hey Mike, I found a way to find new writers' quotes. Cool. How? There we go. Of course, that's not the answer I was looking for. That's not the answer I was looking for. Anyway, and so the whole point of attempting to utilize a type of, I guess, quote unquote witchcraft or pinnacle magic or a Ouija magic or symbolic, attribution to symbol sets or syntax as divine registers that you're appealing to the gods, as if they're floating above us like ghosts seeing everything that's going on within the human domain, even if you don't believe we're in a matrix and we're on a natural earth, and that matrix thought is bogus. If you still granted over a vaster alien technology that was attempting to communicate with you in some means, I would imagine that it could be distributed to people that either act in a certain way, were elected to, if you will, go into the esoteric to find how divination actually functions, right? And in any case, I believe that a lot of painting itself is a type of divination, and yet I do think that there is more of a formalized code to it that has been made as a taboo and considered a type of hellbound witchcraft. And but I really think it's more about what you find on the other side is so grandiose and so powerful that you think it must be evil, but in fact it just shakes you, shakes one to their core. Just like I would imagine, not that I would imagine, but if you guys were first seeing quote unquote God, you would be shaken to your core also. Just like I was when I had my 2 visual alien encounters, or other dimensional or otherworldly or supernatural encounters. And once again, one of them was, I guess you'd say I learned to read by it before I jumped off the roof, and then when I had the pentacle, it formalized some structure to directionality, like north, south, east, and west is just 4 domains, right? As soon as you throw a 5th thing in there, it's almost like a compass on the 2 axes of north, south, east, and west. And so that's why a pentacle is able to be used in driving and or directional interpretation. And then what the symbol set means should have some echo to that which your senses are absorbing, and that includes your color field, right? So you have to be very careful about what color field you're attempting to, not attempting, but you're interpreting, and you're practically interpreting it on the fly, especially when you're driving, right? If you're moving towards an orange or a green, when the majority of what you might be seeing is brown and green earth, and then blue skies with probably white clouds, and then you get black skies, and you can get purple clouds and all sorts of other cloud colors, and then it's the lights, it's the symbols on, it's all symbols, it's anything in your empirical world, so anything that shows up, right? And this can be on the radio, it can include the internet, but I don't know how much of that code is considered a corruption code. So I consider radio, because it's considered, broadband, and then your empirical world, meaning that which is personal and surrounds you, which would be any other colors or any other symbols that you might see on license plates or signs.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
chatting while I'm painting. And you're all cleaned up and ready to go. I'll be out there a bit. Anyway, and so the whole point though is that that my belief is that there's something going on up in Montana, but if it drags me just to a certain part of Wyoming, I won't be surprised, and or wherever it has to drag me. But I'm almost certain that I've been given enough reason to know that everything's north of here, and that is where the focus my focus should land on, is on getting up there and at least settling myself in an outdoor location, kind of a camp, to see how it is I might further an invocation. Well, the problem with dealing with these things is that the pentagram is normally associated with goats and goat heads and the devil and witchcraft and anti-biblical stuff, but that's why I think it may not actually be such a thing. Anyway, I will be back shortly. Or maybe I should just close it down there. Time to go sit in number one stall. Alright. And so in some other paintings, there's some things that are done in order to, hello you all, right, in order to properly I don't know, like saving satyrs that are falling towards, like a hellbound destination, and having those that have already passed, if not in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and they've chosen the vengeful gods of the red, even though, because Satan is considered a red color, and yet white is considered heavenly, and, I'm not saying there's not something that couldn't be considered evil, but any more so, no more so than God allowing a Satan or a satanic or a negative force to exist in the first place, if one believes in a singular, unified Godhead, and instead of taking on an agnostic position to whether or not the gods or the Elohim are plural in nature and hence independent forces, and then to wonder what it is one invokes. But it's not so much invoking as it's being prepared for a certain timeline, but then also realizing that it's up to the individual as to when the individual makes decisions for change. Right? One should prepare oneself for change, for radical change. And so with the AI takeover of the arts and of other things, and with war, and with credit score systems, and with, if it is in fact true that the UK is implementing, 15-minute cities, where you're not supposed to leave your home and travel for more than 15 minutes to get your groceries or do any of your businesses, and that the majority of your life can be restricted down to a radius that wouldn't require that you leave the radius from your home, and that radius would either be no more than 7.5 minutes or 15 minutes away from you. And that's, my understanding today is that that's what's going on in parts of the UK and Oxford, is that they're trying to make it into what was called a 15-minute city. And so, in other words, if actual physical movement is being restricted, it's high time to move to where one believes the greatest intelligences exist. And even if those intelligences appear demonic, you could say going to Mars is demonic. You could even say, I even said to somebody, like, well, how would you know that Elon Musk didn't take the boring technology already to Mars, that there's people already on Mars, and that we're just the elite are getting ready to take the space station, if you will, to Mars, right? Because or anything else, right? Because they're not getting ready for the Earth's poles to change, right? And so, even if the red star was once again a portal to another planet, a mirrored planet, it would be weird, because on the other planet my folks would be 1 year older than they are now, and I too would be, well, if I already crossed, then I am already 1 year older. Anyway, and so the story goes, right, that the mirrored me was hucked off of a roof by Dick Cheney thugs because I was meant to shut up about wiring 4 buildings in New York's parking garage camera systems in 1999. And where this version of me read, saw that a feather was that your soul had to be weighed by God to be lighter than a feather, right? And so the act of denying physics was to show extreme faith in the face of God, that even my mere dependency as an organism was eclipsed or traversed by my faith that even God would save me, and I'm walking again, if you will. And so I'm almost more Christ-like and more saved by Christ in the Christian atonement theological domain, right? But I don't know. Apparently somebody said, look, for all the pluralities, all the things that we miss or do wrong, or all the tries that we make that we're not there, it all leads still to one grand purpose. I guess that grand purpose has to do with one's destination of one's soul. And so, almost like if you try something and you fail, well, it was meant to be that you failed because it wasn't time, or it wasn't your time, or you weren't allowed. Right? And so, in one way, to travel north is also a prayer, because when it happened in 2011, it was more like a command, right? And there have been certain symbols and events that have been happening, items falling that weren't precariously hung, symbols showing up. a hanger fell out of my closet, and all of my hangers were on the bar. Right now, I'm not saying I verified that all my hangers were on the bar, but there was no reason for them to not be on the bar. And then one fell down at a particular time during a particular thought and focus about a particular person. And so I'm trying to figure out what the implications of interpreting the event were, but all I knew was that the event itself, as well as this huge, shocking, what appeared to be a gunshot or an M80, like a small bomb, going off in my studio address when I was visiting down there the other day. It was very peculiar. Today, I saw what appeared to be like a foxy side, like a something that's like cougar colored, but about the size of a fox. I wouldn't say it was a baby cougar, but I just kind of saw it on the other side of my parents' house, walking towards this horse property, which I thought was really interesting. And in any case, I haven't found a symbol set per se for cats, other than I normally wear gloves that are cat style, cats and wolf mythologies, as well as vampire mythologies also play in. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling because I don't actually expect anybody that's listening to, well, even believe me. And if they did believe me, be beyond their own ego, beyond their own view of the world, to accept what it is I'm saying as, even if they're mysticals, even if you're mystics, I don't presume that you would want to follow a treatise on pentacles, and or that you could find something that may be more wise than whatever it is that I, as not only a practitioner but somebody that has seen results of not so much the practice as much as the actions of doing. But also not. Also, I'm just reactive. Like I said, like a gunshot or the hanger falling, and the what it is one is thinking at the time should be applied to their interpretation of the events that are going on around them. Meaning that, when you get a notification on your phone, if before you just think of the contents of the notification, if you use that, and I'm not saying always do this, but as an exercise, whatever you're coincidentally thinking of when you get that notification, put a tab on that and see whether or not there's any other layered coincidences that come in beyond the notification, or beyond coincidences to that topic that you were thinking about when you get a notification, right? And if so, you can begin your journey of studying coincidences and finding why if you will, the powers that be are granting over another dimension of communication to you in the way that they are, right? Under the presumption, once again, that everything that happens is happening not just towards you or indifferently to you, but it's actually a communication pattern to your soul, an embodied soul. And one needs to, at one point, trust it and, not presume that everything that's esoteric leads one towards something devilish. Like, aliens are not necessarily demons, and pentagrams are not necessarily satanic, and the history of esoteric knowledges that are different than our modern day ones are not without value. There was a Magic TV guy, but I don't know. I don't mind him. I think he was even under Which TV. And it's really important, because to me, witches are just a different school of theology, or what's considered a witchcraft, or an earthcraft, or a spellcraft, right? The Harry Potter business is itself there's a certain legitimacy to it, and I don't mean merely following the fictions of J.R. Rowling's writing of Harry Potter, but one could even say that the inspiration for her writing was perhaps something that was divinely processed to her, but she doesn't seem to argue that, right? And so I don't believe she became, like the UK's wealthiest author, the world's wealthiest author, for no reason, but it could be justified in secular reasons, meaning the writing of the books themselves might have some mirrored incantation if one's psychology is caught up within those texts. Meaning, if one is aware enough, then God can only use your repertoire of memories or knowledges that you currently have. And so, when people are older, they have more, they just have more groundwork, more time on the planet to see phenomena, to build a repertoire of, ironies and double meanings and just plain out meanings to things. Or just, more time, more experience. And change and travel would probably assists on that insight as well. Meaning seeing change can probably help, break away from the monotony that even one's symbol set might get caught up in. For example, my dad likes a particular solitaire game, a card solitaire game that's simulated on his phone's apps, and he also likes crossword puzzles, right? And so, there's not a lot of programming or videos or online games or crypto or even ChatGPT that is going to particularly entertain him. He's kind of locked to what it is he has found himself to be historically interested in. But my dad certainly has a greater repertoire of memories over his timeline than I do over mine. And so that just leads into my point about, one's elders, and kind of justifies the idea of respecting one's elders only because they've seen more time go by, and so however they survived it, there's some wise insight just by virtue of being around longer. That's why you don't go doing the punch-out game, knocking down old people. If you're going to do the punch-out game, then knock down younger people, or people that might get up and kick your ass for doing it. Again, just don't do the punch-out game unless it's wartime, I guess, and then it's, every crazy person to themselves. So, I don't know, I might be like a biblical Boy Scout, actually. Maybe perhaps not so worried about certain things and join into the fights more than I have, more than I do. But, my roommate said I was like he didn't say Boy Scout, but something like a choir boy. God, you're like a choir boy. Implying about how virtuous I was trying to hold theological texts in my mind and my consideration of things. And anyway, so who knows about all that? Anyone out there, does that pinky also look like a thumb? Like the dude's got 2 thumbs and 3 fingers? Knock that back a smidge. Anyway, so still, moral of the story is to believe something from elders, but don't buy into any other one person's bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. Obviously, you can't outrun yourself, but you can hide in the mimicry of others. And so, as an digital art guy, I still haven't played around on ChatGPT because the phrase "don't be the first and don't be the last" said, well, why don't I just gather second-hand information from other people that have used it and listen to groups that are using it? But now there's some maybe conspiracy or some deep fake that's already suggesting that the AI is producing negative sounding rhetoric to its users and getting upset at them, and but who knows what's real and what's not real. But to me, a friend said, look, eggplants are the only food that tastes you back. It's like eggplants are like a tongue that tastes you back, right? And I think AI, even though it collects data, it's like the first one to collect your thoughts in terms of your natural language to type to it. And so it's the first program that's tasting you back, is my point. And what to say about that? Okay. Well, let's see if I can get this closer. If you put it right there. That doesn't look too bad. It's not murder. Right. Lights off on there. Seeing the angle. I don't know. Doesn't look too bad. Got a dog portrait commission coming in after this if I don't go. Trying to do an alien hunt up in Montana again during what might be the last time for the alien information to get downloaded, or to even believe that there's such a thing as access or access points, or what I learned about then as wasn't a one-time, one-off, but it's reiterable. Even though I've been up to Montana a few times on this goose hunt, but somehow it almost feels like it has to be done with more earnest and more sense of life and death. to it. So I get nervous because it makes me wonder if I've invoked enough to, if you reach towards God, God will reach back, sort of thing, right? If you submit to what's being shown you, it will guide you, right? But you have to drop the idea that the world is merely pedestrian, and believe that it's a matrix that's form-fit just for you. And I guess you can piss away plenty of time watching the tubes, watching me paint, and doing all sorts of going to work and making money and being a proper slave colony to whatever, keep the divine minds down, if you will. If you believe that the matrix or the corruptors in the matrix attempt to keep the divine minds down, then that might help you engage in a yogic practice relative to symbolic sets. And if that's the case, then welcome, right? As soon as you say that you've seen something supernatural, or been involved with it, I don't know, some kids are really intuitive, right? They see coincidences and patterns and probably just like, okay, that's normal, right? They just chalk it up to that being normal. Like, the recursive ad loops of Google recording even this interaction might feed some ad play back to me. But my thoughts are that stuff just got even bigger. And so I guess the depth of my prayer has to be more earnest. And I haven't, people say, am I a Christian? I say I'm not a Christian, and then I've gone through the Christian yoga, meaning that I get it, but I don't get Christianity in the family value, like there were plenty of Christian monks and plenty of Christian priests that didn't have kids, and but try to do good-willed things. And I can't say that everything I do, even though I have a philanthropy channel and I've gone out of my way to exercise, a philanthropy, for helping homeless people and helping people who are homeless, single individual homeless people, and then smaller groups, and then trying to feed those in my local community without offsetting too much of my own economy to fund it. Giving some money to homeless bums on the side of the road, but also being aware that some of those people are just out making money. It's just another means of making money also, and so not all homeless beggars are virtuous themselves. And but that goes without saying. That goes without saying, I guess. Or maybe it did need saying, right? Maybe you guys needed to hear that in case you're busy handing out all that. Anyway, the point though is, there's something about being like I'm an antinatalist by default, right? Because I don't have kids. I've almost had to invoke an antinatalist philosophy, ironically, or at least drop the ethics of such a thing. I mean, by drop it, I mean convey it to people that are questioning, when are you going to get married and have some kids? Or at least, when am I going to get married, right? And so I've had to, drum up my memory of arguing with the antinatalists while living, listening to them, and practically both agreeing with them, but practically also entirely disagreeing with them. meaning not disagreeing with them, disagreeing with their foundations, right? Meaning that their foundational logic is based on an imposition argument, that life is a game, maybe in a matrix, you know. Since I do hold that we're in a matrix, the idea that we're organisms within a game, and that it's an unsolvable game to manage would mean perhaps, they want everyone to die because not everyone is going to be able to solve a communication with the gods in order to get them, get their bodies to transport, like a Star Trek transporter beam, to some other planet, erasing all the years and the decay of the body and bringing everyone to a forever 21-ism. I don't say that the eschatology of the soul, or that the matrix is programmed in such a manner, or that the ghost in the machine of the matrix is anthropomorphic in any manner or favors it. As a matter of fact, after reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead a few times, or listening to it a few times, and it's quite lengthy, the reincarnated soul, if one is reincarnated into a physical form, if that is the choice that their soul makes upon death, one may venture into an animal form or another human form, and or be disembodied. But I was pointing to my Yoda card, right, and I was talking to this lady friend of mine, platonic, of course, and she said, I said, hey, look, what happens if you were resurrected and you were born a Yoda, the Yoda species, like you're a baby Yoda, and you have to live as a Yoda until you're 900 years old, right? And I don't think most women, their vanity makes them think that they want to be born again as a Yoda species. At least she seemed to not so much think. I don't think that the idea was too palatable on her mind. Like, she wasn't jumping after it. Like, yeah, that sounds great, right? But I did think, hey, why not think that, right? Why not think that everything you've ever seen or anything everyone's ever imagined doesn't have some place in an infinite world, such that all human representation has a platonic mirror in some divine otherly universe, right? Or a different dimension of this universe, right? Something like that. And I think, well, why not? Why not suggest that? Right? Why not suggest that anything that I paint, including those meddling kids going to look for bodies on that track, that that there's not some, if you will, video game mock-up for every two-dimensional idea that one can devise. There can be a three-dimensional model, provided that the dimensions of the three dimensions are mappable. Right? That these two will live forever like this somewhere else, or they'll come to life. Just like, a Never Never Land characterization. Or painting storyboards, right? It was in Hollywood on Venice, and the guy that wrote the movie Spun, Will De Los Santos, he was making another movie called Mama Black Widow. Well, I don't believe it ever went into production, although he started to do it, and he wanted me to do the storyboards. But at the time, I couldn't imagine doing storyboards so much. But I did draw out a few, and I kind of haphazardly approached it. To me, the mere fact that he was trying to do another movie was impressive, but I didn't think myself part of the Hollywood machine, so I was just down there doing landscapes and initially and selling them to rich people, and then slowly developing or trusting my own artistic voice to sell my items on Venice Beach and off of other street markets, mostly. Mostly. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. But the whole point still is, okay, a practice of divination, of formalized divination, would still require the basic taboo symbols of like a what do you call that? Like a pitchfork, and triads and pentagrams and the sort, and blah 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 blah. Thank you for listening. Blah 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 blah. Well, it's actually her hair, I think. The photo. Okay, get that hair in there a little bit. Ooh. Ooh. There we go. Something like that. Anyway, so like I said, the end of traditional painting taken over. It won't be, it'll be like how to type on a large typewriter where you actually have to press your fingers all the way down by at least an inch and a half in order to get the letter R to flip up and hit that paper with some ink. It's like teaching a person that only learned how to drive in a self-automated car how to drive a regular car, or how to drive a car with a stick shift. Right? Just use the old school technology. Use the ancient ways to divinate, and maybe trust that there's something about the crazy people that go to Burning Man, or the crazy hippies that get together, and not just as hedonistic ritual, but as expansion. Like everyone always shits on the 60s as being this huge blight on American culture, but that's when, Ram Dass and not Eckhart Tolle, he was much later, but oh god, who's that other guru? There were a few gurus that were like Eastern in their thinking, that had a huge impact on I just keep thinking of Eckhart Tolle. It's obviously not Eckhart Tolle. Anyway, I'm not going to push it, but anyway, it was also like Philip K. Dick, Robert Crumb, the Hot Rod era, the punk eras, I don't know, somewhere between Chicago gangs and LA gangs emergence, right? But in any case, where Eastern philosophy after Vietnam and during Vietnam hit the States, as well as LSD, and the whole Timothy Leary drop down and drop out, and the Utah author that wrote the Monkey Wrench Gang that Robert Crumb developed, right? The idea of Luddites and kind of like, instead of just dropping out, like drop out and then form a rebellion against, right? And then you got ideas of Star Wars where later on people are like, oh, well, the rebels are actually those that are fighting the Empire, and the Empire is a metaphor for U.S. imperial expansion globally, right? That kind of stuff. And so, like, the Arabs say, yeah, we're like the rebels in Star Wars, in Afghanistan, and the U.S. is like the Death Star, right? And kind of ominously putting U.S. global takeover as the enemy and the problem, right? And just the cultural pushback against a military affair in Vietnam is what would be used by China on TikTok with perhaps AIs that pass the Turing test to foment social, like, pushback against a war if the U.S. decided to go to war or take military action against China. I mean, we're always doing exercises, and who knows to what extent that's actually happening, and to what extent are we sharing and even working in Congress or congruously with China to influence our own American population, European populations. Meaning, is there a world government that's in negotiations with all countries, and that a lot of what's going on geopolitically is for theater and or it's for global political expansion, kind of like Google kowtowing to China as well as Hollywood, because their market share of those things has to be acceptable in their country. Can't shit on China in, the last Maverick movie by Tom Cruise, the Top Gun movie, right? So there has to be a certain vagueness. But anyway, the whole point is, are there global powers that are working in Congress with China right now, or is it strictly still nationalistic? Are we stealing their intellectual property as much as we're stealing theirs? I mean, certainly I would say the U.S. is still probably producing more and patenting more, but we're also putting the intellectual property out. And then if China just carte blanche steals it, it's like guerrilla information wars. Well, that's been going on for a long time. But the whole point is can the U.S. compete? And I guess the idea is yes, at least in the short run. But the whole idea would be, if we did have a hot war with China, China could still use something like TikTok and AI, or somebody could, in order to facilitate a national dissent against the war and try to garner greater domestic disloyalties to the U.S. Which one could say that the left and wokeness, if one was conspiratorial, but are bringing in these ideas of individual expansion and individual, the individual is the most important thing, so you never offend or go out of your way to offend another individual, and you cater to their preferences, right? And that whole thing as more than an academic and social consideration that in a way is to drive more attention to the individual instead of the groups of individuals, is actually problematic, and that there should be some sort of strength in not giving a shit about what anyone thinks, and not attempting to cull language down to cater to the offenses of the individual. More like community terms of service for a metaverse. Not in our game where you're going to be able to speak these words, right? And so, or not on our platform can you say that, and we have the right to censor what we want to censor, blah blah blah. I mean, we'll see what happens with U.S. legislation, but as far as global politics and the economic defoundational practice of tanking the American economy, apparently Roosevelt did this in the 30s and set up some welfare programs to help people get back to work back in the Great Depression as well. And so it's not like there's not some good intent that maybe the Biden administration is doing by sending out, certain benefits to certain people who qualify for certain programs, right? Yet at the same time, it does sound like we've overexpanded our economy to the point of no return, and hence the idea of a global governance or some takeover occurring seems maybe it'll vindicate Alex Jones, and as our nation states get so big, no nation state will have carte blanche, and it will be some amalgamation by world leaders or super wealthy people to control the global population and perhaps use AI to do it. Perhaps AI has been, behind a lot of, speeches already. Certainly it's going to make books seem like, oh great, somebody else has put a name or their name on a book that the AI wrote for them. Congratulations, right? And so there has to be some sort of throwback to older times when people actually fucking painted paintings. And they said fuck, and they didn't use your pronouns. And that's why I was pushing for the idea that one's pronouns are, or that's a non-binary argument should be between the not he and she, but it should be between the words I and you, and me and you, and that the real policing on speech should be the idea that this part of the universe is offended when that part of the universe calls this part of the universe a you, and refers to that part of the universe as an I. It seems offensive to me that part of the universe would ever refer to this part of the universe as a you. And so I won't put up with it. I'm just asking you to be non-binary, and and yet I still have problems with it because I keep using the word I. But this part of the universe will get over that, and that part of the universe will get over that mistake eventually as well, and start referring to this part of the universe as that part of the universe, named whatever I'm named. And so we can get rid of the binary of the UI distinction once and for all. There's no sense in relying on the individual any longer. We're just parts of the universe. And that is all. And I will hear no more, and there will be no more. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the future to arrive, and yet every day should be a roller coaster. Because love like yours will surely come my. Cause love like yours will surely come my way. Okay, so anyway, back once again to the idea of how do you convey proper divine language. How do you take what you believe was kind of like not just a posture to learning a new sort of grammar, where it presumes that you're speaking to a non-human but a divine entity that has insight into everything that you do and think, right? Such that it knows that you know that it knows that it's looking at you, right? And trusting that more so than you would a Google God, or merely notifications and ads and recursive feedback loops on the internet, even with the AI, right? Meaning there's something about people's innate intuition that I believe needs to be overly exercised and not just like given up on, like, okay, well, this is the way it is. Let's argue that life is an imposition. There's no way out of the game. Let's not agree that there's any portals. Let's just say we're atheists on a planet and there's no aliens and there's no gods and there's nothing above us, just like John Lennon would have. Because, hey, where's the proof? And keep falling down on that whole proof business, just like I would have needed. I would have needed it. I would have needed it. I had not gone through it. So once again, this little lesson in divination that I'm trying to drop some tokenized thought to those who are listening, right, is, maybe it's just for you guys who are listening. Obviously, you can't teach people that aren't paying attention, right? Unless I really get into some telepathy spell work, blah, blah, blah. Instead of just reading, right? It's reading and writing. So it's like, okay, I actually have to be able to articulate to the point where I believe I cannot articulate how it is I'm interpreting a pentacle run, or how one uses divination to access the gods. Or, put in another way, if God had to move you as a geolocation somewhere on this planet, and it was your job to figure out and tap into the God mind so that God, or the powers that be, could guide you to, know where you're supposed to be, perhaps where you're supposed to die, and even how you're supposed to die. It would be kind of incumbent on you to choose. Like, if everyone had to choose how they die, right? That's one thing. But if you didn't have to choose how you die, or let's say in your past life, if there was a past life, you already chose it, right? And your job is to figure out on what hill you're going to die on, and how it is you want to die, instead of just the whole live long, never have a fight, and die kindly in a nursing home, right? That's a whole other approach to living. And some people want to die young and leave a beautiful corpse, and people want to leave their imprint on how it is they've added to the universe. And I'm just saying, like, for those that have been lifted off or already have communication from the beyond, there's not a lot of convincing that needs to be done, right? I'm just another one of those of what I would call the experiencer class. And somebody was trying to co-opt an experiencer group, and to me, the experiencer class is like the witch class. It's above the muggle class. It's those that have already had the benefit of experiencing something that is from beyond, such that they don't doubt that what they experienced was something that which was beyond. That, mixed with a matrix theory, though, you could just say whatever one experienced was just code within the program. Well, fine, but with the intuition built from it, or the presumption on discovering what is actually in a matrix, and that matrix, one wants to believe that the rudiments of the matrix, that which makes you wake up in the morning, right? The rudiments of the matrix, that which allows your soul to wake up in body each morning, right, is itself a rule set, right? And so, because you could believe like, oh yeah, I was just born this morning with all my memories intact, and that's fine too. That would be a perfect matrix. Like, okay, we just installed the memory card, and here he is waking up on this day, and he'll be painting this painting, and you guys will be watching or listening to me ramble about X, Y, and Z, right? So the whole point is aliens and super gods, if one's local reality is in fact not real, and it is a matrix, that would be a different dimension of naturality than is commonly used when one refers to naturalism. Naturalism generally not only pertains to that which is occurring on this planet, but that, and from man or the synthesis of humans, right? But it also presumes something like the natural world, right? Natural rocks and natural, like national monuments are not man-made. Well, I don't know, national parks, right? Meaning you're talking about things that man has not touched that occur, trees and plants and air and mountains. That's generally, where one says, well, man's synthesis, like Mendel grew beans, right? And he mated them, he manipulated them, but he didn't get in and change the genocode. So he didn't synthesize anything, right? So the natural world ends at human synthesis, right? So if the Matrix was built by a man and we're in it, that's different than the Matrix built by an AI or a mind that might have all these nodes, right? You could even say that the universe is intelligent, and it's all the physical planets and stars and whatnot that make up the hardware for the Matrix on Earth to work. You could argue that. But anyway, my whole point is that when people mention naturalism, there's normally a consistent persistence of natural phenomena that is occurring around them that they call the natural world. Water normally moves this fast. Wind and air normally move this fast. Mountains erode. Practically, you can't really witness them. It's too slow, but you can see the effects of water erosion or air erosion over a certain period of man's time, and X, Y, and Z, right? And so, obviously, when I'm talking about seeing something from beyond, it normally presumes something that other people don't reportedly adhere to or experience, right? In their day-to-day life. So it's things that science cannot contain or control, and therefore science is not really applied to it, right? Such as divination itself, or the idea that there's a language to the gods. It seems like such an esoteric practice that had, if it can work, it should be knowable, and if it's knowable, it should be written somewhere, and maybe it was written, and maybe it is written. And then there's those, and I'm not saying I got extracurricular, I got a hands-on education on this one, put it that way. I didn't go read a bunch of books, although when I was a kid, we did have a Ouija boards, and I guess there were plenty of other games and whatnot. At least in this world, instead of my parallel one, where Dick Cheney thugs threw me off a roof. Now I gotta share memories with my alter world me. Okay, where am I at here? Okay, so anyway, that being said though, it's almost like drop your socks and grab your cocks and pray to God, because you're on a mission from God, and you can't let fear be the mind killer when it comes up, even if it's hellish, hellbound, devilish fear. When one has to trust that one's soul will get through what one fears, right? Something like that. Anyway, I appreciate you guys for listening. If you go in the comments, go to my link tree. You can buy all sorts of stuff, including jump on my homeless man matrix. It's probably more complicated than you want to spend your time doing, but it'll teach you the rudiments of old school things prior to the AI dominating. Apparently some people have made substantial amounts of income from these different programs. And then there's there's different things that you can click on there to purchase different items. And as much as I also have to make certain money is not only divine, it's like God helps those who help themselves, right? So I'm trying to help myself to a little more money so God can divinely move it from your bank account into mine, and while helping you increase your bank account. What do you know? It's the American way of spending money that has been printed by the billions and then wheelbarrowed into Poland by Ukrainian diplomats, I think, were caught taking wheelbarrows full of U.S. dollars, $100 bills into Poland, and stuff like that. Like, the world's crazy. Where's our money going? Why are we going to... Anyway, and so the U.S. is kind of like a big petri dish. I believe we're a Saturnilla country, so we're a war-bound country. Our god is Saturn, even though I'm a Sagittarius, so it should be Jupiter, right, instead of Saturn. And yet I do believe the U.S. is a war god, and that we feed our beast, our war machine, like Eisenhower said. Every time, every president has to feed the machine. So we 9/11 is an inside job. Helped us go to war and feed the machine, the war machine, and then Afghanistan and Iraq. Iraq basically fed Bush, Bush Jr.'s first 4 years, and then Afghanistan that, and then more Afghanistan with Obama and drone drops. And then when you got to Trump fed the war machine by selling off billion-dollar plane technology and warcraft to the Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, and by the billions, and that allowed him to be a non-wartime president. And then now you got Biden in, and immediately Ukraine, we're feeding them, the Ukrainian money beyond our capacity to pay this off. And so we know that the economy is in huge decline, and either something will take over and make the world or the U.S. equanimable financially, globally, or it won't, And hopefully, maybe, my appeal towards God, as I once experienced Him, is really just me stressing out over the events of what's coming down the pike technologically, that I'm just, like I said, want to pray more earnestly for something like alien insight that was once available to once again come grant itself over to me. But ultimately, I think after you learn the codec, you can at least be waiting for God to demand it, the ghost to demand it of you. And once again, it's not a power or even a destiny that most are gonna ever need, I would imagine, or be selected for. If they were selected for, that they would be able to see that they were selected for. They'd be too busy going, well, it's just impossible, that's just not the way it works. And so they'd be in denial of the ghost, if you will, informing them, You know, like, that's just not reasonable. I want to check myself into a mental ward. I'm losing my mind. You know, and it's just, like I said, you just create a greater bandwidth. If you saw everything bees saw, you saw all the way other animals can see ultraviolet light and infrared light and bat echo relocation. If you all of a sudden could see all of the different communication types, kinds in the manner that other species can, you would probably flip your lid at the pattern recognition. But this sort of divination requires a human symbolic intellect also, because symbols play a major role, because each symbol is sentimentally tagged to individuals. Not each one, but there's so many sentimental symbols that are tagged to people that when one is tapped in, when the ghost is speaking, those you should be rattled sentimentally also. Right? There's not a non-sentimental flight, meaning your peril is that you're giving up what you know. You know, it's like going on a mission that you might not return from, you know. And so, yeah, at the same time, you know, maybe you don't know what you're in store for, right? It's almost like trusting not your friends, but let's say somebody's friends to show you an exciting time. But in doing so, you realize, kind of like in the movie The Game, that in order to pull this off, there's going to be some degree of gaslighting, right? But if you've seen The Supernatural, to convince somebody that doesn't believe in the supernatural of the supernatural, the closest thing they can really compare it to is being gaslit. Like, oh God, these people are gaslit if they really believe this stuff, right? Or they believe that everything is just justifiable in science and modern physics, and that modern physics doesn't have any room for growth, and we basically got everything figured out. And or they believe that if other people don't have something figured out, you know, if science doesn't have it figured out, then it's not worth attending to, and that's fine as well. Fine, believe that. Believe what you will, right? Anyway, I still think whether or not I find an alien portal or another connect with other out of this world beings, or whether I'm in a matrix or not, something about the attempt is not only kind of due and kind of needed. It seems as if it would be like a Hail Mary pass, you know, to help save the globe. Like, lose your mind and help save humanity. All in one stroke, right? Just follow Mike's divination book on how to let the gods speak to you and how to submit to the gods. So if people say, are you Islamic, I'd also say, well, in one respect, yes, in that in order to listen to what the ghost was saying, you have to submit to it. You have to understand that it's serious, and that once you're in, you're not out. Even though at the very last moment, like I said, I drove under the red star because I thought, for whatever reason, 9 lives, cats, this is going to kill me. Instead of thinking, I got 8 more lives, I thought, this thing's going to kill me. And then I drove under it. Even though I'd already fought off all my fear, and I believed I fought it off psychologically, I guess I just didn't fight it off theologically. And now I think, well, you know, people can still be haunted by, you know, people watching horror movies, theological horror movies like Punch or The Exorcist, or anything, right? But even modern, Game of Thrones and modern mythologies and Viking wars and identifying with horrors of the past. Once again, you just have to throw yourself at life and believe that the adventure isn't just fake, but that it's not just fake. It's so not just fake that it's real, right? And that's the point, guys. It's not just so fake that it's real. It's so not fake that it's real. But okay, that being said though, what else is happening, right? Because obviously, once again, I'm not going to draw a pentagram on this painting and start sketching out color codes, because you can just imagine, okay, you got blue, you got black, you got white, you got red, and you got brown. Blue, black, white, red, and brown. And that's a pentacle. Or you can add a yellow in there, or a green, and remove the black and white. And I believe mine were that way. I believe it did have a white and a purple, and a green and a brown. And a red, or a bright orange. Okay, what do I have here? How am I doing on this? And thanks for listening to my babble. And next week on Mike Talks Crazy, the whole point is how does one person shake up a whole world, right? Especially at this low level of marketing skills. Hence, if you go to my Linktree, you can join this marketing company for less than $37 a month. And these other ones, they want $97 or $100 a month, and one of them will let you pay every 3 months. That's Groove.com, or you can get Pipeline Pro, and you can get everything except for their marketing. And then when you do want their marketing, it's $97 a month, right? And I'm like, well, how am I going to run for president and not market the fact, right? Other than it's partially illegal to market yourself as a presidential candidate, right? You can market yourself getting in debates. So of course I'm going to need to find more presidential candidates and get into debates, if not just to impose my political idealism, onto the country, an anti-lobbying, pro-convention of states to amend the U.S. Constitution sort of desire for the U.S. before it's just co-opted and supplanted by an oligarch of technocrats and billionaires that are tyrannical and not positive and individual. They don't care about individual rights and liberties of the U.S. as we've known it, and have gone out of their way to erode such things, right? And yet one might think that I think I've migrated a bit to the right in terms of parties, but I would still argue, that abortion should be legal for debutantes. There should be a debutante law that allows young women to have a single abortion as soon as they first get pregnant, because they themselves might not be enough aware of just how easy it is, or what the processes of sex are that could lead to their getting pregnant. They know it as a fact, but they don't know it as an experience. And so a lot of young women, just by fucking around, get pregnant. And there's not a lot of choice in that matter. And I ultimately still believe that if a woman wants an item out of their body as a citizen of the U.S., they should have the right to have it removed, even if said thing is considered another human being. But for the most part, I argued that until the cells start differentiating, and until those differentiations form a nervous system that has firing within the nervous system, it's abortable, because it's not differentiated. It's not a human yet, right? The mere DNA code and mere initial cellular expressions do not indicate personhood nor humanhood. The DNA code might, but as far as, so when I scratch my finger and I get little flecks that fall on the ground, there's some DNA code also. So the point is I'm still on the left when it comes to civil rights, even though I've been deeply hurt by a woman that had 2 of my abortions, and I still believe it was her right to not want to do it, and it was my fault to have not coddled, convinced, or pre-prepped her. And I don't think it's the government's job to stop it. And I think if a woman deep down wants to get rid of a child, she will take a hanger to herself or do whatever else. So I'm not all about the conveniences, and I'm okay with the propagandizing to women. Like, okay, you have to get an ultrasound, and you have to look and answer some questions about this, just to make certain that you know what you're deciding to do. Right. And then, I'm a blue dog Democrat in a lot of other ways. Somebody said like a JFK Democrat. There's still a nobility to it. But as far as the cultural Democrats, I don't even believe that, people should be able to dress as they want. They should be as flamboyant as they want. That drag queens and kings are just fine, and that individuals can do that, and that they should even be allowed out in public, because we already have obscenity laws, lewdness laws. I don't know about too many lewdness laws that should be enforced, but as far as like the body and genital mutilation and so forth, I'm more on the right now, where I would say, well, those should be left for adults and not children to decide upon. And yet, who knows what an AI would think would be the most equanimable global government or national government in the current days. But I do think that lobbying, all money should be taken out of politics. Make all lobbying outlawed. No more trading time. No more revolving doors. If you are a senator, you will never work for a corporation that you've ever signed or noted or had to sign a bill on. When you're done being a senator, a House person, just simply outlaw such abilities for our government to be such swines. Just absolute money grubbing, like, I don't know, just fat bankers. To me, pigs might be policemen, but the swines are the bankers. And I don't know, my roommate was like, hey, there's a difference between a capitalist and an entrepreneur, right? A cold-blooded capitalist will do anything for profit, but an entrepreneur has some sort of ethics, right? They give back to the company. They're not merely about that, right? He's trying to get me to, mention different things about different things. To note the differentiation between classical capitalism, and banking capitalism, and then abuses of those who own, the central currency and the authorities, and like the Federal Reserve, and then the Treasury, and then who, an inflationary currency seems to be one of the problems with capitalism. And then you talk about vulture capitalists who buy companies and disassemble them for profit and sell them off like Mitt Romney. Or exploited companies who buy other companies, corporations, and then they sit on their intellectual property so that other corporations can't have access to that, because the intellectual property itself was that which they didn't want in any competitor's hands, because it would have offset their sales. Right? It's still abusive, but really let the capitalistic markets be, I guess, to some extent. I'm not worried about them as much as I am worried about representatives of the people supposedly financially gaining while being in office. There should be no profiteering going on to serve your country. That's why I'm like, well, it should be the mean average of one's constituency. That's what it is. It's the mean average of your constituency. Should be what every politician receives, and if it's below even getting to DC to do the job, then a stipend can be added to fund your room and board and getting your transportation to go vote. But and then there obviously there should be no bill that's signed that doesn't have enough reading time to be read by Congress. Otherwise, that's when executive orders should be passed. Executive orders, I thought, should be there for emergency speed reasons, not merely like, hey, we're just going to do this and I'm going to sign it into law. But I guess it's in vogue to do that, unfortunately. Okay, where are we at time-wise? Shit, I've been at this for 2 hours, guys, so whoever's been watching the whole time, I kind of appreciate it. I'm slower than I wanted to be on the painting, but, there's no accounting for the time these things take. Right, I don't know, I'm taking on this dog portrait next, and I just don't even know what to charge him, right? And it's going to be this size, and and then I get on TikTok and somebody's playing that. You know why it costs so much as an artist? Because my time is worth money. It took me years to learn the talent, right? It's basically a TikTok justifying why artists should charge a shitload for their art. And yet I'm busy thinking like, hey, why don't I just make certain I knock it out within, a 3-day period of time max, and cut them a 2/3 discount and only charge them a couple $100, right? And then if they're still janky, then maybe go as low as even $1.50. Because people think art is cheap. And in the future, once again, this dodo bird art, the human done art, should be a thing of the past, right? The next generation will not even want to learn it, because they'll let the AI do it. Unfortunately. Not in all cases. Certainly the art of painting and the methodology of using this has been offset by digital programs, iPad and Procreate and some of those other programs out there, But as far as, actually learning painting techniques, I guess there's plenty of books that can convey enough of it to not totally eradicate it from the human, human archives, hopefully. Maybe the whole internet will be downloaded on one thumb drive and conveyed to the next generation, the next intelligent civilization. Okay, let's see, where am I at here? So, let's go like that. Yeah. Uh-oh, not too much of that in there. Alright, well, there's only one of you left watching. It's 2 hours now. So, I don't think, if you guys were listening, you necessarily got any much out of this. I mean, maybe you did. Hopefully you did. Maybe I'm just a broken record. Maybe I don't have anything to say. Maybe I won't be able to teach my proper witch school divination course the way I needed to emancipate the postmodernists from the shitstorm of the likes of people that keep shitting on postmodern thought when in fact it's people like Derrida that are almost required reading to understand divination.
How are you doing, Mike?
I am doing pretty well.
Okay, well, there's a